Some people come into your life, and suddenly, everything before them feels like waiting. That was Angela to Yung-chong.
I never thought I'd see you again. I know. I've missed you.
She wasn't just the woman he loved. She was the reason the word love finally made
Are
sense
you
to
all
him.
right?
But something happened in this story. Yung-chong almost walked past her again. The homeless woman sat beside the convenience store wall in the street, feeding stray cats with trembling hands. Her coat looked too thin for winter. Her face carried the exhausted stillness of someone the world had stopped seeing years ago. And then she spoke. "I know you." Yung-chong barely looked up anymore when she said it. He had heard her say those words before, just like many broken people did. But this time, something made him stop. She was cleaning a ring, carefully, slowly, like it was the only thing left in her life that still mattered. The moment he saw it, his entire body went cold. Because 7 years ago, he placed that exact ring on the finger of the woman he loved. The woman, they told him, was dead. His breathing turned uneven. No, this can't be possible. He stepped closer. The homeless woman looked up at him with frightened, distant eyes, and whispered again, "I know you." His hands shook as he reached for the ring. She didn't resist. He turned it carefully toward the light. And there, engraved inside the band, were two initials, Y and A. The breath left his body instantly, because the woman standing in front of him was wearing Angela's ring. And deep down, some terrifying part of him already knew why. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Because before Angela disappeared for 7 years, she loved him enough to destroy her own life, trying to save his. Before she became a woman wandering the streets with broken memories, she was simply Angela. Yung-chong and Angela were the kind of lovebirds. That made sense in the most essential way. The way two people fit when they have simply chosen each other fully and without condition. They had been together for 2 years before the engagement. He had proposed simply, honestly, without the kind of grand performance that is really about the performer. He had looked at her and said what he meant, and she had said yes before he finished saying it, and both laughed in the slightly disbelieving way, because something they wanted very much actually arrives. The matching rings were Angela's idea. A pair of bands, thin gold, with small oval stones of deep blue that they would wear in the months before the wedding, a symbol of the future they were building. She had suggested it quietly, in the offhand way she suggested things that mattered to her. He had agreed immediately. The jeweler made them to her design, and when they put them on, his on his right hand, hers on her left, something settled between them that felt like a promise that required no further words. Y and A, engraved inside each one. Yung-chong got sick and eventually. He ignored the early signs, the way powerful men tend to ignore inconvenient things about their own bodies. But the fatigue deepened. The bruising appeared from nowhere. He went to the doctor alone, without telling Angela, and sat very still while the doctor explained what was happening inside him and what would need to happen next. He needed a bone marrow transplant to survive or else. He drove home and sat alone with that information for a long time. And the thought that kept coming back, not what this meant for him, but what Angela would do the moment she found out. He knew her. He knew she would immediately want to be tested as a donor. He knew she would offer without hesitation, without calculating what it would cost her. And bone marrow donation was not without risk. The process was physically demanding. The recovery was real. He could not let her do that for him. So he hid it. He searched for a donor match through the hospital. He went to every appointment alone. He deflected her questions. For weeks, he carried this alone, believing he was protecting her. He was wrong to think he could protect Angela from anything she had already decided to walk toward. She found out. He never knew exactly how. What he knew was that she appeared in front of him with a calm in her eyes that was not the calm of someone who had just heard manageable news, but someone who had already decided what she was going to do. She said, "I got tested, I'm a match." He said her name. She said, "Don't. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you I'm a match, and I'm going to do this, and you're going to let me." She reached across and put her hand over his. The ring caught the light. She said, "You just have to get better. That's all I'm asking of you." He looked at her for a long time, and then said, "I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if anything should happen. Please, Angela, don't," but she insisted. "Everything is going to be okay, my love. You don't have to worry. Just get better for me." Angela gave her bone marrow to save the man she loved. She went into surgery with her eyes open, fully knowing what she was doing, and she did it without second thoughts, because that was who Angela was. She did not do things halfway. She did not love people one-sided. While Yung-chong was fighting for his life, and Angela had given part of herself to make that possible, there was a woman watching all of this with a very different kind of calculation happening behind her eyes. Mio-sun had wanted Yung-chong for a long time, not with the uncomplicated wanting of someone simply in love, but with the precise, status-conscious desire of a woman who had decided that a man like him belonged with a woman like her. She was obsessed with wealth, with power, with the correct arrangement of people at the correct levels of society. And in her mind, that arrangement had no room for Angela. Mio-sun believed, with a conviction she would never say aloud but never questioned internally, that poor women had no place beside powerful men. That they didn't fit. That eventually the world corrected these misalignments, and a man like Yung-chong would come to his senses. She had been waiting for him to come to his senses for 2 years. But Yung-chong never looked at her that way. He never looked at anyone but Angela. Mio-sun watched Angela go into that hospital to donate her bone marrow, and she understood that the world was not going to correct itself on its own. And so, she found Dr. Chai. Dr. Chai was Angela's assigned recovery physician. He was a man who understood that Mio-sun was offering him something he needed and asking something he was capable of providing. They did not have many conversations. He totally understood what she wanted, and she understood what it would cost her, and the arrangement was made. Mio-sun's belief was simple. With Angela out of the way, Yung-chong would have no one left. And without Angela, he would eventually turn toward whoever was there. And she had made sure she was going to be there. Angela woke from surgery weak and in pain. She was placed in a recovery room. She was told to rest, that she was doing well. Dr. Chai began his work quietly. The first injection made her drowsy, still moving in and out of sleep, and she assumed it was something routine, possibly doctors had ordered as part of her care. By the second injection, she felt something was wrong. A wrongness she couldn't name, the room behaving strangely, her thoughts sliding away before she could finish them, a fear rising that had no specific object. She tried to speak. The words came out wrong or didn't come out at all. By the time Dr. Chai came for the third injection, Angela could no longer hold a clear thought for long enough to act on it. She was being injected with psychiatric drugs, repeatedly, deliberately, while she was too weak from surgery to resist, too confused to report what was happening, too alone to be witnessed by anyone who would have stopped it. She became mentally unstable. She became disoriented. She drifted further and further from the surface of herself, from her name, from the reason she was there, from everything that had made her Angela. But the fear never left. The fear was the one constant, living underneath all the confusion. She would look at the white ceiling of her room and be afraid. She would hear footsteps in the corridor and her body would go rigid. She would feel the needle and want to scream and be unable to find the scream inside herself. And she would reach for the ring. Even when she had lost her name, even when she had lost his face. She would find the ring on her hand and hold it, and the fear would thin, something she couldn't name that was still, somehow, real. Yung-chong spent his recovery in a separate wing of the same hospital. He was isolated, as his doctors had recommended limited visitors, limited movement, his body working hard to receive what Angela had given him. He called her room. He was told she was resting. He sent what he could. He was impatient with his own recovery in the way people are when someone they love is hurting elsewhere. He did not know what was happening in her room. The people who knew were the people doing it. Dr. Chai came to his room on a morning Yung-chong would never stop reliving. He had a way of looking sorrowful that seemed genuine, everything carefully pitched, the right pause in the right place, his voice slowing at the edges of words he needed Yung-chong to absorb. He said that Angela had developed complications. He said that in rare cases, the medications involved in recovery could trigger reactions that were impossible to predict. He said that despite everything, despite every effort made, she was gone. Yung-chong sat in that hospital bed and heard those words and felt the world stop. He asked to see her. Dr. Chai took him to her. He saw Angela lying lifeless on the hospital bed. For the first time, the most ruthless man wept so badly. I told you not to. Why would you leave me in this world alone? Please come back to me. Angela couldn't hear a thing because the drug's dose had made her temporarily lifeless at that moment. And that was part of the doer's plan. These things sometimes happen very quickly. Dr. Chai said, I'm sorry for your loss. He offered Yung-chong things, sedatives, counselors, time that could not touch what had just been done and said. Yung-chong was escorted out of the room and asked to rest to gain full recovery. Angela's records were altered quietly. Her name in the system was changed. Her discharge paperwork listed someone who was not her. And the woman who had gone into that hospital to save the man she loved was put out into the world under a name that was not hers, in a body that was still healing, with a mind that the drugs had fractured, alone, disoriented, and completely unreachable by anyone who might have looked for her. She did not die. She simply disappeared into the street of the city. The drugs faded eventually, not all at once. The clearing was slow and uneven, hours of something close to coherence followed by hours of confusion, the pattern repeating for weeks, then months. There was no one to guide her through it. There was no one who knew what she had been through or why she was the way she was. She was simply a woman who seemed unwell, who moved through the city's margins without demanding anything, who did not cause problems. She did not know her own name for a long time, neither his name. She did not know what had happened to her. She knew only the fear, constant, formless, and the ring. The ring was the one thing she held onto through all of it, not because she understood why, but because when she touched it, something happened inside her that was the emotional resemblance of a door that would not fully close. Something was still there that she could not reach but could feel. She lived the way people in her situation live, shelters when she could find them, streets when she couldn't, moving when she was moved along and staying when she was allowed to stay. She did not beg. That, too, seemed to be something the damage hadn't reached, some structural part of who she was that remained. She began feeding the stray cats. She didn't choose to exactly. It was more that she found herself doing it and doing it again and again until it became the part of her days. She protected them from weather, from cruelty, from hunger. She noticed when one was missing, when a new one appeared. The cats allowed her close in, and on cold nights they settled around her. They did not replace anything, but they were real and were present, and she was not entirely alone. Every day, she cleaned the ring. Carefully, thoroughly, with whatever she had, the edge of her sleeve, a clean corner of fabric. She would hold it up to whatever light was available and look at the stone, and look at the small engraving inside it, and feel the things she could never name. I know this, she would think, I know this from somewhere. She was right. She just couldn't find the somewhere anymore. And then sometimes, not every day, she would see him. She never knew how she recognized him. His face was not stored anywhere she could consciously access, but something in her body knew. Something below memory, below language. She would see him at a distance on a street or passing in a car or walking with purpose in that way he had, and everything in her would go still. And she would say what she always said quietly to herself as much as to him. I know you. I know you. 7 years changes a person. Grief changes a person faster. Yung-chong had rebuilt. From the outside, he had rebuilt extremely well. He was more powerful than he had been before the illness. The kind of man other men paid close attention to in rooms, the kind whose decisions moved things. He was competent, respected. He was, by most measures, successful. He was also emotionally colder than he had ever been. This was not a thing anyone pointed out to him directly, because people rarely point things like this out to powerful men. But it was visible in small ways if you knew where to look. The distance he kept. the way he ended conversations before they reached anything real. He was haunted by Angela's death in the way certain griefs haunt, deeply and permanently. He still had her ring, kept it in a drawer in his bedroom. He did not wear it anymore. He had stopped wearing his own matching band in the second year, because wearing it had become unbearable in a way he didn't have language for. But he hadn't thrown it away. That was the line he held, without explanation, without fully understanding why he held it. The ring stayed, and he became the man you could find walking through the city with his head down and his phone in his hand, moving quickly, giving the world just enough of his attention to navigate it, keeping the rest somewhere no one was permitted to go. He walked past her on those streets more than once. He used to hear her say, "I know you," and told himself she said it to everyone. He had believed Angela was dead, but little did he know he walked past her, and then he saw the ring. On that Tuesday morning, the busy street, he turned around and he crouched down in front of her and he saw what she was holding, the stone, the setting, the engraving inside. Y and A. Where did you get this? He asked, but she couldn't tell. A lot ran through his mind and head. Trying to understand what is happening, he took her home that day. He put her somewhere safe and quiet, and he sat across from her and looked at her face. The face he had spent 7 years trying not to think about, and he made a decision. He was going to find out what had happened. He was going to find out everything. He was not going to stop until he had turned over every piece of what he had been told and found what was underneath it, because he couldn't understand why she had the ring and her face when he looked closely seemed so familiar. He said to himself, "She's my Angela. I can feel it." He went to the hospital first. He asked for Angela's records, her admission, her recovery, her death certificate. He asked calmly, with the particular authority of a man who does not accept, "We'll look into it," as a response. The death certificate could not be located. He asked about inconsistencies in her file. The administrator became careful, reaches the answer, dates that didn't align. Notes from her recovery period that were vague in ways clinical notes are not usually vague. Gaps where there should have been continuity. He asked to speak with the nurses who had been on duty during Angela's recovery. The nurses were nervous. Not all of them, but the ones who had been in her corridor during that period. There was a quality to how they answered his questions that was not quite dishonesty and was not quite honesty. Pauses that were too long. Eyes that moved away at specific words. One of them asked him, before he even finished his first question, how he had come to be asking about this particular patient. He told her why. She looked at him for a long time. She said she had noticed things during that time that she had not fully understood. The woman in that room had been progressing as expected, and then the change came quickly and in ways that didn't align with her clinical picture. She had mentioned it to a superior and been told it was the medication. She said Dr. Chai had spent a significant amount of time in that room. He found Dr. Chai. His investigators located him within 2 weeks, relocated, working at a smaller clinic, living quietly. When Yung-chong's team began asking questions, Dr. Chai's first account of Angela's case did not match his second. His second did not match his third. He changed details. He introduced new explanations that contradicted the explanations he had given before. It was a man who had spent years without anyone looking at him closely, and now someone was looking, and he was not holding together under it. Yung-chong went back to Angela. He sat across from her in the quiet room and asked her,
It's okay. You're safe now.
Sniffs.
I promise. You can trust me.
if she remembered anything about the hospital. She went still. It was the stillness of something suddenly frightened, her body registering the word before her mind had processed it. She said slowly. The ceiling was white. He waited, she said. I was afraid. A pause. Someone came more than once, and I tried. Her hand tightened around the ring. I tried to say something, I couldn't say anything. He sat with her in silence, she said. There was something in my arm more than once. He didn't move. He kept his voice level because he could feel what was rising in him, and he was not going to let it fill the room she was trying to be safe in. He said, I believe you. Those 3 words, small, plain, nothing remarkable about them on their own, did something to her face that he couldn't fully look at. The truth came out the way truths come out piece by piece, then all at once. The payment trail between Mio-san and Dr. Chai. Structured carefully, money always marks the ground it moves through, and investigators who know what they're looking for eventually find the marks. The altered records. Dr. Chai's inconsistencies, documented across multiple interviews. The testimony of the nurse who had been afraid to speak for 7 years and was afraid no longer. The conspiracy was fully exposed. Dr. Chai and Mio-sun were revealed as the architects of what had been done to Angela. The plan they had made together, the specific and deliberate destruction of one woman's life. What Mio-sun had believed. That poor woman did not deserve powerful men. That with Angela gone, Yung-chong would eventually turn toward her. That desire was a justification for anything. Because Yung-chong never still looked at her afterward despite the trials to win him over. He promised he owes his heart to Angela only, even after the believed she was dead. That were not actual truth. The legal proceedings came after. What Mio-sun had built, the image, the reputation, the social position she had constructed with such care over so many years, came apart in public, and there was nothing elegant about the coming apart. The humiliation was complete, and it was not private. The people who had sat at her tables and attended the events she organized and accepted the version of herself she presented to the world, they found out. All of them. Mio-sun had believed that a woman's worth was measured in her quality to power. She found out what it looked like when that quality was taken away. Angela didn't heal overnight. She healed slowly. Loud sounds frightened her. A door slammed somewhere in the building, and she was on her feet before she was aware of having moved, her back against the wall, her chest heaving. Someone in the hallway raised their voice. Not at her, not even near her, just the ordinary raised voice of a frustrating phone call, and she startled so completely that she knocked over what was in her hands and couldn't stop shaking for 5 minutes afterward. Yung-chong had learned by then that the most important thing he could do in those moments was simply remain, quietly, without urgency, without trying to fix or shorten what she was going through. He sat near her, spoke when she spoke. He was silent when she was silent. He waited. Her memories came back the way they came, not cleanly, just a fragment here. And there. She remembered something about a kitchen and morning light before she remembered his name. She remembered the feeling of choosing something in a shop before she remembered what she had chosen. The injections, those memories arrived with physical responses she could not control. She would remember, and her arm would tense as if the needle were happening again, and she would have to breathe through it slowly, the ring held in both hands. She was not who she had been before. That was what 7 years of what had been done to her looked like in an honest accounting. She was not a restored version of herself. She was Angela marked by what had been done, still here, still present, still herself in the ways that had never left and slowly rebuilding in the ways that had. The cats were brought to where she was staying. She fed them every morning, the way she always do. That part of her had never gone anywhere. The legal proceedings was completed. The sentences came down. Mio-sun and Dr. Chai were sentenced life imprisonment. The truth was documented and filed and entered into records that would exist now whether anyone wanted them to or not. Yung-chong sat with something that none of the proceedings could address. He sat with it in the quiet hours. Alone. In the space between everything else, she had been alive, while he had been grieving. While he had rebuilt his life and become the colder, more guarded version of himself that grief made, she had been in this city. On these streets. She had been sleeping in doorways and feeding stray cats and cleaning a ring she couldn't explain and saying, "I know you," to a man who had walked past from her. He had walked away from her voice. That fragmented, careful voice saying the only true thing left to her, and he told himself it meant nothing and kept walking. He could not assign blame for what Mio-sun and Dr. Chai had done to Angela. That was their crime, their choice, their consequence to carry. But he sat with his own accounting, separate from theirs. The specific shape of what it had cost her. What 7 years on the streets of Seoul cost a person. What it felt like to lose not just your name and your home and your mind, but to lose them while carrying in the deepest, most inarticulate part of yourself, a love you could no longer find the words for. She had still said, "I know you." Even when she knew nothing else. He let it be what it was. He did not look away from it. And when he was finished sitting with it, he came to her with his ring in his hand. The matching band, the one that had sat in that drawer for 7 years. He had taken it out that morning and held it for a long time before he came to find her. She was sitting quietly. She looked up when he came in. He sat down near her, and for a moment neither of them said anything. She had been looking at her own ring, the way she still did, holding it, turning it, that gesture that had become part of who she was long before she remembered why. He held out his hand, open, with his ring resting in his palm. She looked at it. She looked at the stone, the same blue as hers, the same setting, the same hand that had made them both. Something moved across her face. something that did not have a clean name. The kind of recognition that comes from somewhere below thought, below memory, where the truest things live. He said, Angela. Just her name. That was all. He slowly knelt beside her. He took the ring from his palm and held it gently, and he reached for her hand, and she let him. She turned her hand over and let him hold it, and he carefully slid the ring onto her finger. He stayed kneeling. He did not let go of her hand. I will always and forever love my dear Angela. She looked at the ring on her finger. She looked at it for a long time, the way she had looked at it for 7 years, on that street, on those cold nights in those shelters with those cats around her, and the fear underneath everything and the something she couldn't name that turned out to be this. This moment. This hand holding hers. She looked up at him. Her eyes were full of tears. Not the kind that come from a single feeling, not just grief, relief, or staggering weight of what had been lost and what had somehow impossibly found its way back. All of it at once. Every year, every cold morning. Every time she had cleaned that ring and not known why. Every time she had seen his face and said the only true thing left to her. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He was still kneeling. His hand was shaking. It had always shaken at the moments that mattered. She would not have remembered that yet, but it was true. It had always been true. From the first time he put a ring on her finger and couldn't hold his hand steady. She looked at him with tears on her face, and he looked at her, and the 7 years were not gone. They could not be gone. They were written into both of them now, permanently. But they were no longer the last thing. The ring was on her finger. She was here. That was the last thing. You're always welcome to stay at Secret Mafia Love and explore the journey of love with us. Story written and directed by Charles.